Good morning. Welcome to our service, whether you're here in the church or online watching in some way at home, or out in the parking lot listening to us over the AM radio. If you are, everyone is welcome in the church. We are open, and if you're fully vaccinated, you're welcome to wear a mask or not, as whatever makes you feel more comfortable. And if you're not fully vaccinated, we hope that you would wear a mask. I'm Eileen, I'm here to share the announcements, most of which are found in your bulletins. We actually don't have a lot of announcements, but they're important ones. Tomorrow night will be the last meeting before the fair, which the fair will be a week from Friday. Anyone that's available tomorrow night, they'll be putting together baskets and any other finishing touches that need to be done. So everybody that is possibly available, please come. They'll be in the gate room at 7 o'clock. Next Sunday after church, where we're closed, we'll be actually setting up for the fair after church next Sunday. Moving tables around if you're able. And other setting up. That'll be immediately following the service next Sunday. There will be the food pantry open on Wednesday. Always set for help this week back up. That's it. Today, you need help or Wednesday or a couple of people if you can hang out. We thank our greeter this morning and also our lector, which is Sue this morning, and our prayer letters are by Grace. And if you've got concerns that you want the pastor to bring up, get them to Grace before the prayer so she can get them up to him. And if you want a letter sent, make sure you get the address to her. Are there any other announcements? Craig.
Good morning, everybody. I'd just like to deliver my mother's dearest regards and thanks for the kind letters and wishes that you sent and extended to her. We had a wonderful surprise 90th birthday party for her. She's still talking about it. And as far as we know, everything went well. No word of anybody becoming a super spreader or anything like that. So, I thank God for the celebration, for the security, safety, everybody, and then we're getting back home to this point. And again, thanks to the church.
That's good. I didn't realize it was a surprise party. Greg just was thanking everyone for the prayer letters and for supporting his mom's 90th birthday surprise party. He just got back from us. Anything else? Seeing no others, I turn the service over to Pastor Stuart Tucker. Thank you.
For grace to you all, and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I have a special request for Hope. Start waving your arms if you can't hear me, because we were talking about that last night. I'm trying to be close to the mic here. Just wanted to share one joy that we had yesterday was the celebration and memory of Peter Williams, who was over at First Church in Attleboro, and Grace and Sue and Bill Clark and Joyce and and Don, of course, you were there. Didn't see it yet, and also David Hill was there, and it was just so incredibly moving and fitting, and just an amazing tribute to him. The Choral Society sang and did so wonderfully. It was a wonderful sermon, and it was just keeping moving all around. And Grace tells me that they recorded it.
They told me they had recorded it, and I will find out when it would be available and if there'll be a cost.
Oh, okay. So and they're great. Yeah. Well, because hopefully the choral group is going to continue, and which he founded, and I'm going to miss them on Christmas. Those were wonderful concerts, especially. So hopefully they'll go on, and that would be something to share with folks too. And with that, let us join together in our call to worship. Magnify the Lord, exalt God's holy name.
The Lord hears our prayers and transforms our suffering into joy.
Magnify the Lord, you righteous of the Lord.
We will exalt God's holy name.
Let us pray together. God, our healer, source of everlasting mercy, give us courage to cry out to you when the crowd silences us. Give us the wisdom to admit our limitations and accept our limited understanding. Give us confidence to sing your praises in the midst of fear and doubt. Grant us healing, O God, that we may be truly well and whole and follow you all the days of our lives. As I think we all know, we don't pass the plate for our offering. We do have the offering plate in the back, which you can make your offering as you come in, as you leave, or in the middle of it, as however the Spirit moves. But however we make our offering, let us bless our offerings together now as we join in our offering prayer. Mighty God, just as you restore sight to the blind and help the afflicted, use these offerings to provide refuge, the lost, and mercy for those who suffer. May our gifts find those who cry out in their need and seek you with their whole hearts. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Psalm is number 34, and it is on page 769 in your hymn.
I will bless the Lord at all times. God's praise shall continually be in my mouth. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt God's name together. Look to God and be radiant, so your faces shall never be ashamed. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear God and delivers them. Oh, fear the Lord, you his holy ones, for those who fear God have no want. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit.
Depart from evil and do good.
The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. The ears of the Lord hear their cry.
The face of the Lord is against evildoers, to cut off the remembrance of them.
When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them.
The Lord keeps all their bones, not one of them is broken.
Evil shall slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned.
The Lord redeems the life of his servants. Nothing else will be refuge.
New Testament lesson today is Mark 10, verses 46 through 52. They came to Jericho as he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho. Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Well, the gospel lesson we just heard from the Gospel of Mark tells a story of a blind man named Bartimaeus who recovers his sight through faith in Jesus. Mark's gospel is full of miraculous healings. But there's something special about this one. And Mark gives us a number of clues that this is a special story. First, there's the amount of detail to this particular healing story. We are made to feel the desperation of a blind man who shouts for Jesus' attention over the noise of the crowd, which tries to silence him because he's a nuisance, but he persists. And second, it's the fact that the story is placed in a very key position in Mark's gospel. He follows a series of predictions by Jesus that he will be killed and rise again. We've been talking about these predictions the last several Sundays. And after the story of Bartimaeus, we immediately read of Jesus' triumphant entry in Jerusalem. So the healing of Bartimaeus comes between Jesus' predictions of his passion and the unfolding of those predictions, beginning with Palm Sunday. Bartimaeus is important because his story summarizes the whole gospel of Mark. In fact, he represents the whole salvation history of Israel. Bartimaeus is blind. Blind as Israel had always been to the warnings of the prophets. Blind to the fact that if they were not faithful to God, God would abandon them, and they'd be destroyed as a nation. Bartimaeus was blind, as the scribes and Pharisees were blind because they refused to listen to Jesus. He was blind as members of Jesus' own family who thought he was out of his mind. He was blind as the disciples were, because Jesus explained to them plainly that he was on his way to the cross, and yet they just didn't get it. We human beings belong to the one species that is capable of selective blindness. If we don't want to see something, we can choose not to. We are capable of watching the pennant race and be unaware that our toddler in the room with us is eating the water. We are capable of looking past and looking through people we don't want to acknowledge. Once, I had a neighbor who refused to look at me. Every time I saw him, I would try to catch his eye just to say hello to each other, just be neighborly. he was blind to my existence, chose me. Now, my neighbor's dog was intensely aware of my presence. In fact, that mutt would go crazy barking every time he saw me. And that took place for the whole year that we lived there. This was in Elkhart, Indiana. When we were there. Looking back, I prefer the relationship I had with the dog. At least to acknowledge my existence. Very selective, aren't we? About what we choose to see and not see. This congregation here in Plainville is one of the few churches I've served where we choose to see people with food insecurity in our community. Why don't all churches do what we do? I know it's a lot of work, but why are we here if not to serve the community in which we find ourselves? What's our excuse for our existence if we are not in mission in some way reaching out? My last church, Carter Memorial, one person came to the realization that even though this was a community that was fairly affluent, there were still hungry people, and they began a ministry there. They fed people for free. They had a free dinner every Wednesday night, and just started that just because of one person piping up. Eventually, they instituted having members come to this, so that we actually, rather than put food on the table for people to come in, we'd invite them to eat with us, as equals, as guests, like we'd have a guest over, and it honored people's dignity more that way, if you invite them as a guest rather than have it as a matter of charity. And I was always very proud of Carter Memorial for making that step. Various countries in the world face serious famine. I'm thinking, for instance, about Haiti. But the problem is that most of the country is controlled by gangs. In order for a charitable organization to operate here, we know all about the situation where how many 17 missionaries, some of them children, one of them a toddler, I think, kidnapped by a gang, demanding ransom. And this week on the radio, there was a person in a charitable organization. They don't drive anywhere in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, to get out of the city, the capital, and to go out into the country. They have to fly, just because there's no way you can drive from one place to another. How do you invest hunger in that situation where you got to go through gangs in order to get food where it needs to be? And that is a situation repeated throughout the world, either because of failed states or just corruption of the states that's there. But that's not an excuse to be blind by the fact that that's a situation. I struggle sometimes because I'm a kind of a news addict. Watch the news every day. I watch and listen to more than one source of the news because it amazes me. I always am attentive to the headline, because the headline in one news source is one story, and in another news source they would ignore it or kind of downplay it, put it in the B or the C block or something like that. It always amazes me. What's the most important thing in the world? Well, it's this, according to one news source. Well, no, it's something else, according to another. And I wonder what's the most important thing that happened today from God's perspective? And can we assume that our news source is in agreement with that? I always feel just one of the things I struggle with and continue to. Our selective blindness is the thing that a particular news outlet chooses to highlight or chooses to ignore. Does that mean that we should pay more attention or ignore? This is kind of highlighted in this last couple of months here with the disappearance of a white woman. And yet there are hundreds of women of color who have disappeared, Native American women, Black women, and then the news ignores them, but a pretty little blonde white woman disappears, and it's 24-hour coverage. And the suffering and the torment of the families is equal, regardless of the demographic of the person who disappears. Selective blindness. Like the citizens of Jericho, that crowd that surrounded Jesus, we can be blind, and very often are, to people like Bartimaeus, people who are poor and handicapped, who've been pushed to the edge of society. Bartimaeus cried out for mercy. Many in the crowd tried to silence him. Beggars are supposed to mind their place, not make a scene, not give the neighborhood a bad name. When Bartimaeus kept shouting for Jesus, he broke those rules, called attention to himself, forced people to see him, confronted him with his suffering. But we resist having our blindfolds removed. We want the homeless to stay in the inner city away from us. Let them do their suffering out of sight and out of mind. But poverty confronts us in trailer courts and in housing for the poor, for off the beaten tracks. It haunts single working mothers trying to raise a family on minimum wage, working poor, migrant worker, and incredibly the university student. My wife knows people that go to the university who maybe eat one meal a day. That's more astonishing. Well, think about it. Strikes people who are well off and those who can't afford, the basics. We just have a way of turning a blind eye. If we had lived in Jericho 2,000 years ago, we very well would have turned a blind eye to Bartimaeus, someone like him. And when he came shouting, our instinct would be to try to silence him. But we are not allowed to remain blind and deaf. Jesus heard and saw the suffering of Bartimaeus. The Lord had compassion upon him, it says, and restored his sight. It said, "Go, your faith has made you well." Bartimaeus represents everyone who is touched and made whole by Jesus. He represents Israel, blinded by sin, alienated from God, but rescued from his darkness by the light that came into the world. Bartimaeus represents the followers of Jesus who were blind at first to the nature of Jesus' mission. At first, they refused to see the cross, which they would have to carry in order to receive the crown. The presence of Christ relentlessly strips our blindfolds away. We who call ourselves disciples of Christ are called to follow him. We are called to follow the example of Jesus, who is not blind to the plight of the blind. We are called to a faith that lives with open eyes. Like Jesus, we must see and respond to the needs of the poor, weak, and the outcast. We are called to a faith that will not allow us to remain blind to the needs of others. There's a story about a pair of rabbis who debated the question of exactly when does night end and the day begin. One rabbi said night ends and the day begins when you can tell the difference between a blue thread and a red thread. The other rabbi said no. Night ends and the day begins when you can recognize the face of your brother. This is how we know that our night is ended and our day begun. When we can look around this room and say, brother, sister. And do the same thing when we see a homeless person walking on our street, walking down our highway. When this happens, we know that our blindness is ended. We have recovered something precious. We have recovered not just our sight, but we have become children of the Heavenly Father that He created us to be. Having heard the word read and proclaimed, let us respond with the hymn, Open My Eyes, that I may see. It's 454 in your hymns. Lord, we bless you at all times. Your praise is continually in our mouths. Souls make our boast in you. We gather to sing our praises and exalt your holy name together. In every fine place you care for us and provide our needs far beyond our expectations. It is our fault. We rely too much on our own knowledge. We ignore your wisdom and power with our own ignorance and weakness. We are moved to true humility and repentance. Lift us from the dust and ashes of our sin and restore us once more as your chosen and beloved. All our efforts for you are made worthy by the constant intercession of our great high priest, Jesus Christ, the Lord. Let your Spirit flow through us, that we may raise our eyes to him, empower our testimony, that all the world may believe. For many this day who cry out in mercy in the midst of their distress. Reach out, we pray, to all who suffer from afflictions of the flesh, mind, soul. In particular, we lift up to you today Barbara Boykin, Celeste Brown, Roberta Bumpus, Sandy Germano, Sheila Grant, Alea Jessic, Christopher Mingo, Paul Nicholson, Brian Murphy, recovering from back surgery, AJ Ketta, Michael Sharkey, Evelyn Donsole, Mark and Jennifer Thompson, Esme Smith. We offer sympathies to the family of Faye and Bob Summer on the loss of Faye's brother, Ron. And we offer up happy birthday wishes to Lori Simmons, Susan Simmons, and Greg Combs. To all of these, let them taste and see how good you are. Comfort those who mourn, heal the sick, give peace to those who are dying. O God, we seek you. Answer and deliver us, for we offer them in the name of the one who taught us how to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our parting hymn is number 351. benediction together. We weren't broken, but are now whole.
We go with peace in our hearts.
We once were blind, but now we see.
We go with hope in our lives.
We once were lost, but now are found.
We go with joy and thanksgiving.
Go in peace.